All right, I'm installing this Knight manual 4x4 actuator. My friends have had a lot of issues with these as far as waterproofing and oil leaking out of them and water getting into here and corroding stuff. So I'm gonna try one out myself. So the first thing you gotta do is remove the factory actuator. There's my factory actuator. And you gotta remove your handlebar assembly with your factory buttons. So as you can see, mine's got a little bit of rust in it. This thing does go deep. So I unbolted it there, followed the wire down beneath the fender. And if you pull out these clips right here, 1, 2 clips, you can pick this up and get enough room to get in there and unplug that orange connector. So now the buttons are disconnected and the kit does come with 2 plugs. So one of these goes down here, plugs that side of the wire harness, and the top one goes up here and plugs this side of the wire harness so that you don't have open plugs. It's nice that the kit includes those. And then you got to fish the connector out of here, which requires removing these 2 10mm bolts down there so you've got enough room to pull the connector all the way out. It's a little tight in this area of the ATV to work. That's where Honda hides all the big connectors, annoyingly. But you can do it without pulling the front rack and everything and pulling this. It's just a little tight. But yeah, so time to install it and see if I have any better luck. I generally do a pretty good job maintaining stuff. So I think as long as you keep it adjusted and oiled properly, it'll work well. And of course, I'm gonna do some lessons learned from my friends, which is put ultra gray on these threads because I've seen oil squirt out of there. And also try to seal this up with some little zip ties because I've seen oil squirt out of this as well. And then this top piece, there's no seal behind here, so I'm gonna grease that up to try to make it a little more watertight and give this thing the best chance of being reliable as possible. Another thing while you're in here, this obviously is getting corroded when you go underwater. You see there's a little bit of rust on my throttle cable there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some motor oil in here to drip down the throttle cable to help lubricate that. Might as well do that while it's all open. Alrighty, so I got it hooked up. It's pretty simple how it works. This little piece here slots on to the piece in the differential that moves the selector and engages 4-wheel drive and 2-wheel drive. So right now we're in 2-wheel drive, and if I go over to 4 like so, you can see it turns the piece, and then I go to diff lock, turns it some more. So this thing travels through about 90 degrees of rotation between 2-wheel drive to 4-wheel drive. Okay, so there's springs in both ends of this. So this bottom one has a pretty good sized spring that tries to force the actuator into the 2-wheel drive position. That also keeps some tension on the cable there, as you can see. So when you shift from 4-wheel drive to 2-wheel drive, it's really that bottom spring that's pushing the selector over. You shouldn't be forcing it into 2-wheel drive because you can pull a cable, you can't push a cable. So that kind of makes sense. But the adjustment there is pretty critical to have the right amount of tension on the cable, but also get it sitting in the right spot. And I really wish the instructions had a little more detail about how to get that dialed in. It took a lot of trial and error for me. These O-ring interfaces have also been pretty problematic in the past as far as letting water in. It comes with these 2 pretty fat O-rings that you stretch over everything. And this, whatever this is supposed to be a secondary seal or something, I guess. But honestly, I mean, just look at it. I'm not even going to say anything about it because it's pretty obvious that it's not going to be terribly helpful. I don't love these things, but it's better than flashing 4-wheel drive, and it is nice to be able to feel your system engage. So I'm going to give it a shot. I did not get the one that has the switches to keep the lights working because that adds another leak point. You have another gasket set, and these things already let water in your differential as it is, so why do you want an additional leak point is my thought process. So yeah, time to get it on there, set it all up, get it adjusted, and then try to seal it up best I can. When I initially went to screw this shaft, threaded shaft right here, into there, the threads were pretty screwed up, so I had to go ahead and clean them up some. I didn't want to screw in by hand at all, so that's also been fun. But just take your time with it. It's pretty simple to see how it works, and if you get it adjusted right, and you seal everything up, and you keep the cable oiled, and you keep this oiled up here, hopefully it'll be reliable. Okay, so as far as this adjustment works, I've had some friends ask questions on this, and I do see how it's kind of confusing. So what makes the most sense to me is to install it like this before you get underneath the bike where it's hard to work on and get it figured out first. So if you loosen up all the nuts, you screw them all the way in, that is as much slack as you can get. And there is a little bit of slack in the cable. You can see there, right? And that's kind of what you want. Keep that pushed in there. So what I did was I screwed it in till I got, you can start to see the inner piece right there. So it's screwed into about here. And then I locked down this nut. Now when you adjust it, you'll use, it's spinning with it, but you'll use this to adjust it, to tighten it up, and then you'll use this nut to lock down your adjuster. I think that's how it's supposed to be designed. That's why this piece right here is so long. That makes the most sense to me. Again, there's an O-ring behind there, and there's some ultra gray in here to keep that interface sealed. It can also leak at the threads here and at the top here, like I said before. So just trying to explain how I'm doing it. So basically this inner piece, this inner threaded piece, is locked down to the housing with this nut, and I'm going to adjust it by turning it here. That makes the most sense to me. Now that I got all that figured out, I'm going to disassemble it again, run the cable, and put it together at the bottom. But you know, it's harder to work down here than it is up here, so wanted to figure it out first. Okay, so once I got mine all on there and adjusted, that's what it looks like. You can see I got some zip ties on that boot to try to keep the water out of the cable. And you can see I got ultra gray right there, and there's actually ultra gray back here too a little bit. So hopefully it's sealed up. So let me show you how it's adjusted right now. Right now, it's in two-wheel drive. You can tell that because both tires spin the same direction, and there's no resistance. So I'm gonna spin the tire real slow. I'm gonna show you, you zoom out. I'll show you when it engages four-wheel drive. Get it all in one shot. So right about there, it's engaged, okay? So now it's in four-wheel drive. I've got it adjusted fairly tight. You can see that it engaged about halfway between there. And then if I keep spinning it, and I go to diff lock also engages fairly early, and boom, we're in diff lock. To disengage it, click it up. All right, we're back in four-wheel drive. And then get into two-wheel drive. Now we're back in two-wheel drive. So it works good for now. It's a little finicky to engage and disengage, but you gotta play with the adjustment. I think I got it pretty good. But of course, it's a cable, right? So as the cable wears and stretches, you gotta adjust it. Make sure you route the cable where there's no sharp bends in it as well. And obviously the cable's on the handlebar, so it has to steer. So you wanna make sure that there's no pinching. I had mine run down right there next to the brake line. So now I got to put the headlight pod back together, the headlight adjuster back together, and all that crap. So fun. But yeah, it's on there. Pulling the wheel well, the fender well, and the tire is the only way to do the job properly. Okay, so playing with this thing a little bit more and with the adjustment down here. And what I kind of realized is it's a little finicky. So I used to have the cable routed through the headlight pod, like, you know, normal. And it was kind of sticky and hard to get into two-wheel drive. And then I just have a big loop like this, make the bend a little easier. And now it actually shifts into two-wheel drive a lot easier. So how you route the cable and how you adjust it is very important to making it work smoothly. Also, you can see I took this apart and greased it up real good, just because there's no seal right there. So I wanted to keep it from getting rusty and keep water getting in and stuff like that. But now it works pretty good. So it goes right into two-wheel drive without too much hassle. So got to test ride it obviously, but I think I got it pretty close to adjusted properly. I don't like the cable hanging out like that. Just, you know, branches could grab it or whatever, but that's how it seems to work the best, keeping the cable as straight as possible.